Oh yes, welcome back to another race weekend. Canada's F1 podcast. It's Dames, Darryl, team manager for Pro Racing Ontario, here to discuss the Austrian Grand Prix. But before we get into that, like, comment, subscribe, share, YouTube, DSPs, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. And of course, coming off a big race weekend, Motormaster Ron Fellows karting championship. Big shouts out to everybody who competed. Pro Racing team was out there. How'd they do?
We did good. Got a couple podiums, could have got a couple top steps, but red flag came out in the middle of one of the races while we were battling for the lead, and we had some good strong finishes from a lot of our guys, so we're pretty happy about it.
Awesome, glad to hear that. Speaking of red flags, red flag threw a bit of a curveball into this weekend's race. We were talking off camera, off mic just now. Typically, Austrian Grand Prix, not one of my favorites. It's usually been pretty much a Red Bull dominant track, but this weekend it was not the case. Leclerc P1, Verstappen P3, and for 3 races in a row, Hamilton P3.
Yes.
Now let's start with Charles Leclerc. It's a great day to be a Leclerc kart dealer.
Yes.
I'm sure the phone is ringing off the hook.
Yes,
they want the fast carts. Great bounce back weekend for him. It was crazy. He hasn't been on the podium in like 5 or 6 races now.
It's been weird.
And to come back P1 in Austria, it was just a great race.
Yeah, he needed this weekend. He needed to turn it around. He needed to get that momentum back into Ferrari's corner. Right now, Ferrari was kind of on their back foot for a while there. They were kind of making some bad decisions that kind of put them in bad situations. And, this one, they kind of made the right call for everything and kind of, the dominoes fell in place, I guess you can say.
On the flip, it looked like this time around, Verstappen was on the back foot. He just didn't quite have the pace in the feature race. The sprint race, he pretty much walked away from everybody. But in sprint, when it finished, Leclerc was P2 and he was on the radio like, yo, we got something tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, in the sprint race, if he didn't get held up by Sainz, it would have been a little bit more of a push. We weren't 100% sure if it was like Verstappen was just saving the car for the race or Leclerc was actually, gaining on him in the end of the race. So, that kind of left a little bit of a question going into the feature race on Sunday. And I guess he was right. He had something for them. He felt really good in the car. He looked really good in the car. He looked comfortable. Besides that little mechanical failure from Sainz, I think Ferrari is definitely on their way up again.
So if you're Leclerc, you're driving, right? Yeah. Team manager, something's going on with the car. You're in P1. Something's going on with the race car.
There's a 3-second gap with 10 laps to go.
How would you manage that? Or if you're on, you have a driver and a situation like that comes about, what do you tell them?
At that point, the driver's got to realize he's got to baby the car a little bit more. He can't brake as deep as he was. He can't get hard on the throttle as far as he was because there was a mechanical failure from Sainz that they don't 100% know it was. It looked like a power unit issue, but they didn't know what was going on. So at that point, the driver's got to step back and be like, okay, I can drive easier this way on the car and not lose as much time, right? So he was losing maybe 4 or 5 tenths a lap, and by the end of it, it was enough to hold on, and that just shows why he's one of the top guys on the grid. It was just good to see that he was. His head was in the game again. It wasn't like he's fighting with his team on the radio or he's fighting with his teammate or, there's a lot of other factors that were kind of showing kind of Ferrari falling apart for a little bit there for a couple of races. And, this really showed, even though they lost the sprint race, they jumped right back on the saddle and came into the feature and had a very, very, very strong showing in them in the feature. And I think, they would have had an easy 1-2 if that mechanical failure didn't happen.
I was just about to say a 1-2 was definitely on the cards because it happened as Sainz was about to overtake Verstappen.
He was within 2 or 3 car lines.
So let's talk about that for a second. Now, in the end, right? If things play out the way it plays out, meaning everything still pretty much moves forward the same. Verstappen wins a lot of the races. Leclerc wins one, and the championship doesn't quite close down.
Yeah.
Will Ferrari blame reliability or strategy?
I honestly, at this point, it's strategy. Their car has always been pretty solid. It's they've both had their reliability issues, so they can't really say that it's the car's reliability. I think in the end, it's more their strategy and putting their drivers in the right position at this point. They're going into races and making decisions that are on the fly that 90% of the people that are into F1 are like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Like, and people that are just getting into the sport that don't exactly understand what's going on still look at some of the decisions they're making. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? This race showed that they can make correct decisions. They can put a proper strategy together. And I think this was a big booster for the team to show that they were on a different strategy than Red Bull, and they made it work.
Do they have to switch their focus into Leclerc and not be so 50-50 and unbiased in their approach to every race weekend?
I think so. I think they have to realize that it's almost halfway into the season. Well, it is halfway into the season now. So they have to kind of define, okay, we are going to put this into, our top driver at this point, which is Leclerc. They gave Sainz the opportunity to charge back to get into the fight with this championship, and that it's kind of cost them a couple times in the end. So they have to realize now, you know what, we are halfway in. Sainz is always going to be there to get bad wins and get, mix it up a bit more. But I think they have to start focusing on Leclerc a little bit more because he is the top driver. With Red Bull, you see it a little bit more with Verstappen, but with Perez being the number 2 driver, like second there, second in the championship.
Well, it's tricky right now with Perez because, outside of this past weekend, the DNF obviously hurts his title fight, right? But he was right there. He's number 2, right? So I think we all know, if you follow the sport, you know what I mean? Verstappen he's the number 1 driver. That's the way it is. But kudos to Perez for putting up the fight this long. And who's to say, next time out, Max doesn't suffer the DNF or whatever the case may be, right? And the thing about it was Perez had some speed this weekend. He qualified. They put him down to P13. He came up to P5 for the feature. Yeah. He looked like he had the Red Bull speed this weekend. You know what I mean?
I think, it was kind of a shame, everything that happened to him this weekend. It kind of took him away from Max to separate him a little bit more, to be like, okay, now we can say, hey, 1-2. If he had his proper race like he's been having in the last couple of weeks, or the last few races, it's shown that he's part of this team. He can win that championship just as much as Max can win it.
Absolutely.
And it was hard for, Horner and those guys to be like, yes, Max is our number 1 driver, because how could you say that when your number 2 driver is the one that's pressuring your number 1 driver, right?
Right.
So it gets a little tricky in certain situations, but I think right now Ferrari's got to say, Leclerc is number 1. Sorry, Sainz, you gotta. If it comes down to it, where we're battling for wins and you guys are nose to tail, you got to give him the points because we got to catch Max at this point.
Let's talk about Perez and Russell. Lap 1 incident.
Yeah.
FIA was all over the place this weekend.
Yeah. I don't know.
We'll talk about that afterwards. But overtaking on an outside, Russell issued a 5-second penalty on the opening lap. How do you call that one?
I think it's racing. Perez put himself in there. Yes, he was ahead of George, in the middle of the corner, but then George was getting the acceleration.
Right on the apex, he was ahead.
And then he started to pull a little bit, but I honestly think it's with a track like Austria, this happens every single year.
Albon,
Perez, like Leclerc, everyone. It happens.
Norris, it was Norris and Perez. Yeah.
And when you come down to it, it's like, coming into this race, you guys should realize and be like, hey guys, this is the rule. This is what's going to be the rule. If you guys pull this move, we're not going to make a call, or we are going to make a call, but. With the Perez incident, it's like you're putting yourself in a compromising position by putting yourself on the outside like that. Mm-hmm. And George, when they made contact, was really almost on the white line on the inside. It's just one of those corners where they're going to understeer on the exit a little bit more because it's such an open radius corner.
To me, I would agree that's a racing incident, but the FIA was everywhere on the white lines this weekend. And what a stark contrast! From last weekend to this weekend, because in the last podcast, I'd mentioned it to you. I think Perez overtook
4 wheels
Leclerc, 4 wheels out, clearly outside, and nothing happened. And then this weekend, all of a sudden, if you take, an inch over the white line, you're losing, you're getting penalties, and everybody seemed to get them.
It was just every lap there. It seemed like they were giving warnings out, penalties out, this, that. I think it was 4 or 5 guys that got penalties by the end of the race.
That's too much.
Yeah, I agree. and it's like, where they're running off, okay, I get it. If they went like way over, half wide. A car over, instead of like, if their tire just drops over the white line, it's like, okay.
How much of an advantage are you going to...
Maybe in qualifying, But in the race, it's really not going to do that. Quarter tenth that they gained is not really going to affect the race later on in the race. Warn them, go ahead. But, if it's like there was replays of like when Hamilton's like, I didn't go off. And it was like, he went off, but it was like,
minute.
Norris,
yeah.
Same thing. And I was like, wow, they're really cracking down on this weekend.
Well, the thing about the crackdown is we're all for the crackdown, but just be consistent with the crackdown because corner one, Sainz was all the way off the track,
and then gained a position into the next corner.
And then nothing happened. You know what I mean? And then after that, it was like, yo, you get a red flag, you get a red flag, or not a red flag, sorry, a black flag, you get a black. And it was just like, man. Talk about a massive overcorrection, and this kind of brings into the race director rotating thing. Like
I was just about to say
seemed like a good idea at the time, but
then you have different outlooks from a race director from each weekend, right? Because you're going to take it different than what I'm going to take it, and what you're going to take it, and what everyone else is going to take. And when you get different race directors, pretty much every other weekend, you're going to get different calls, and the consistency is going to go away. And then that's when the drivers are going to be like, well, last week this guy did this and he got away with it, and I did the exact same thing this weekend, and I'm getting penalized for it. And then they're like warning this, double warning this, and it's like, okay, well, who gets a penalty now? I've lost track of how many penalties and warnings. And
but I hate to sour it, but I mean, I think we're like only a couple steps away from Formula One just coming up with their own, like similar to NBA, NHL, they need their own setup.
But everything's based off of F1, pretty much the FIA rules, right? The rule set is kind of based off of what they're doing, and
this is I don't know. It was a messy weekend.
Yeah,
I didn't really like that part of the weekend. Just let them go out there and race, and the thing about it is like a guy's lapping in P9, let's say, and he's got 12 seconds from the guy in front of him, 18 seconds from the guy behind him, and you're giving him penalties. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Mercedes. 3 in a row for Lewis Hamilton.
Yep.
It looked like he could have started second row had he not parked it into the
wall,
which was, I couldn't believe it. Because you never really see it.
We've never seen that. And both to go down.
Right.
Both to go down in one qualifying. And it's not a mechanical, it's driver error stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to think, when's the last time I've seen Lewis Hamilton? I mean, there was a wet race early last year, but he was able to come out and drive off. But
that was more in a race when you're under still pressure in qualifying. I don't know when's the last time he's put it in.
I think they said it was like 2007, McLaren, Brazil or something like that.
What a sight to see. It was crazy. And that just shows, he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable, where he was getting comfortable to push a little bit more. And he's just trying to find the limit of that car, and I think he's starting to get used to it. I think he's definitely starting to perform. He's going blow for blow with Russell now, where Russell kind of outperformed him for the first bunch of races, and I'm happy to see him back up front.
Other than pit stops, you can't really blame Mercedes. Like, they're driving around, the drivers are driving around, not a car that's not terrible, but it's not as good as the front running pack. But they're right where they're supposed to be, and they're capitalizing every single week. 3-4.
And that's the big part of this whole constructor and drivers championship, Like, they've been consistent. They've been having, not crazy reliability issues or anything like that. And you can see that, when they start to get that consistency in, they're going to start developing the car a little bit more like they are right now, and they're going to slowly start to hack away at that lead pack.
The only issue, it would appear, is straight line speed.
Yes.
Of all the things to fix. Easiest one to fix?
I would think so. The drag reduction, you would just need, to figure out what's causing the straight line speed to, the turbulence or whatever that's happening with the car to create that drag, and, kind of... That's what wind tunnels are for, to kind of reduce the drag on the car. So if it was an ill handling car, that's all a lot different, because what do you do at that point? There's so many things you have to change to try to get the car to handle. It could be the pickup points on the suspension. It could be everything under the sun that would hurt you from doing stuff like that. And I honestly think right now, straight line speed is probably going to be the easier way to do it. Will it unstabilize the car in the tight stuff? Probably. But that's the reason why these are the top engineers in the world in this industry, and I think they're definitely in a step in the right direction.
Now, the only reason we know the car is down on straight line performance is because Lewis Hamilton was on the radio talking about Mick Schumacher, who had the straight line performance.
And he struggled to get by
Mick,
him.
P6, had a good sprint race too. This is 2 races now in the point. And he's been the talk of the weekend on social media. Like, we're seeing a different swagger from Schumacher right now. Talk about that little piece of driver confidence.
Yes, and he says, he's just getting comfortable in the car. The media's kind of turned away from him in the past couple races, so that's huge to get a weight off your shoulders.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah, like it's hard, man. And when the media is all over you and you almost try to push yourself a little bit too hard because you're trying to prove the media wrong or prove other people wrong. And I think he just got to the point where he's like, screw it, I'm a Schumacher. I know how to drive. I know what I'm doing. I have some great role models around me to help me and guide me in the right direction. Screw what the media says. Every single person that's helping him out has had those times where they've had scrutiny on them from the media, especially Vettel. Hamilton likes talking to him, and Vettel's like a huge role model for him.
Yeah.
And for him to, have these types of role models that will kind of guide him and be like, hey man, I know that this is tough, and when these media people are saying that you shouldn't be in the car and when you should be losing your ride, and we've all gone through it, you just have to push through it, perform like you should, and he's doing it now. And I think that's part of making the big step to the big, the big leagues, I guess you can say.
Overwhelmed, underwhelmed, surprised.
You gotta say overwhelming is Mick, man. Like, that was a huge performance from him. I was very happy to see that he's got 2 consistent podium positions, and it wasn't like, usually when people get their first points position, when they usually get their first points position, the next race is kind of, a wash, and they kind of drop back, and he outperformed his last points position. So I think it was great, and that was really overwhelming, and I was happy about it. Underwhelming, I gotta go, honestly, I'm gonna say for the whole kind of weekend, I've got to go with Vettel. Like, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know
what's up with that Aston, man. What's up with that?
That car's hurting. Like,
hard.
It's bad. Like, I didn't think they would. And every time they say, yeah, we got some new upgrades, the car goes worse. And this is, like, the car in the rain is an absolute handful. The Vettel he's just having more and more issues on track, off track, and it's just like, I'm just waiting for him to come back and be like, all right, there it is, guys. Yeah. And it's like, okay, there's a glimmer of hope in practice, and then all of a sudden he goes into qualifying, and then they're second and third last. Like,
yeah, it's strange. I wonder if it's one of those things where sometimes you just got to stay the course. Like, did they pull the plug on the development of the car too quick to go copy somebody else's design?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because it seemed to be going. It wasn't fast, but there wasn't like this much underwhelmed.
No.
Before they changed it.
Yeah, it was like they would show glimmer. They would get into. They were scoring points.
They were getting out of Q1.
Yeah, exactly, and they can't even get out of Q1 right now, and they can't say, oh, it's Stroll. No, Vettel's struggling in that car, and Stroll is a 10th off him every qualifying so far.
Yeah.
So it's the car, man. Like, I don't understand how they're struggling so much. I don't know how they keep going backwards with the development. I like you said, maybe they're just copying the wrong things. I don't know.
Copying the wrong cars.
Surprise! I'm gonna say the whole Haas team, like the double points this weekend.
Yep.
Like, they showed great pace in the sprint race. They showed that they can hang with Lewis and the Mercedes. Like you said, I think I just want them to. Maybe they put too much money into development over the winter that they can't put upgrades into the car, but they really need to get that car a little bit quicker.
But it's strong. Okay. Like, I still feel like they're punching above their weight. I don't think anybody expected this.
No.
Zero. I think they still thought they would have been fighting with Williams.
Yeah.
For P19 and P20.
Yeah.
Right. So to have
and Aston.
Yeah. Well, everybody thought Aston would be fighting for P3 and 4 with Mercedes or McLaren. You know what I mean? Like, so the Haas thing it's very interesting. They ate shit, for lack of a better term,
for the longest time.
And then I'm happy to see it. And then they have somebody in Magnussen who's got some credential, who developed the car a little bit, and they've got a young stud. Because let's be honest, Schumacher, he's won everything leading into Formula One, and that's what people don't realize. Like, no, this kid can wheel. He can wheel. You don't just win F3, F2, and then because your name make it to Formula One. Like, that's not, that's not his resume. So 1 or 2 upgrades in the right direction could really pay dividends for them, and we're definitely looking forward to that. As we move on to the French Grand Prix, lots of lines. Set your TV correct on that one.
Yeah. Put the colors right.
Yeah.
Make sure.
But who do you think has the upper hand going into that now? Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes is even predicted to do pretty well.
I think just because of the straight line speed, we gotta say Red Bull. It's not that it's got tight chicanes and stuff like that, but it's a very fast, very very fast track. So I think we can see the Red Bulls maybe jumping up, but this weekend the Ferraris were able to kind of keep up with that straight line speed a little bit more.
At the same time, you can't let Leclerc get much momentum now, because if he gets momentum and they don't have any reliability or car issues for Ferrari moving forward, that could bring this championship right back together after the summer break. And be honest, that's really what we want to see.
Yes.
But we will see after the French Grand Prix.
Yes.
We'll be back talking to you another race weekend. Of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Check.
And of course, you can always take us on the go wherever you get your podcast for your streaming up there. For Darryl Timmers, I'm Nellas saying farewell. Until next time.